The race for Wenatchee School Board Director Position 3 has incumbent Sonny Hemphill facing retired businessman Martin Barron. Hemphill was one of a three-person slate of candidates that was elected in 2017, promising change. She is the first of the three to come up for re-election.
Okay, Sonny, let's start with you.
All right.
You were elected 2 years ago, and you came in on a platform of change.
I did.
That you saw was needed for the district.
Yes.
2 years later, are you happy with the way things have gone and where you're headed?
Yes. I'm quite happy with the way things have gone. We are headed in a really positive direction. As you know, we welcomed a new superintendent to the district. He began work on July 1st, and the board had our first meeting with him on July 10th, and I'm not sure the man has stopped moving since. I am hearing all kinds of positive things from staff members, from the public. I'm going to brag a little bit. I think the board made an incredibly good decision in hiring Dr. Paul Gordon, and we worked incredibly hard to make certain we did bring the right person to Wenatchee.
So Martin, you're running against an incumbent for the school board.
That is correct, yes.
She's the school board president. You may not be as happy with the way things are going if you decided to challenge her.
That's true, but actually I think there have been some considerable improvements since I first took an interest in this. If you look at my signs, they'll say 4-hour schools. And I became interested in this when I read a lot about a coalition of 3 people, which is something I totally disagree with. I am strongly independent, and I believe the appropriate role for a school board member, Sonny, is always to use independent judgment and vote independently. So I was concerned about that right from when it started. And then I read reports of morale problems, and there was the looming budget deficit, which had absolutely nothing to do with you, McCleary, and a whole bunch of circumstances. And yes, I do think things are going well. Now, something I would say, I very much welcome Paul Gordon, but something I've said is I wrote my campaign before he ever arrived. And I said, you first got to listen, then you ask questions, and then you think, and then you work in a group. And I do think it's true. He's doing a great job. Congratulations to everybody. But it's very similar to what I stood for well before this started. And I'm really standing because large numbers of people asked me to run. That's what happened when I applied for and did not get a vacant position on the board. And that's why I'm running, for the good of the community, because I think I have the skills to help it.
Now, Sonny, he mentioned the 3-person group that came in, you and 2 others.
Yes.
And whether you were acting independently or you were acting as a group. How would you respond to that?
We ran together. We were like-minded. There was a committee of people who started looking for folks to run, and I had encouraged someone to run, and then she turned around and came back to me and said, Sonny, will you run? And met with some folks. We went through a long process, and we did run together. It was very clear that change was needed in the district, and the most definite way to make change was to have 3 votes and to begin working on some of the issues that had been neglected on the board for a very long time, had been neglected in the district. I think the overwhelming issue was the culture of the district, and we had not seen that to be always of the most positive nature.
Do you think, Martin, that culture was part of the problem of the past for the school district?
Well, something I say about the past is I come into this, I'm future-oriented. And I think if you think there are problems, and there may well have been, the right way to go about it is to enable people to improve with a positive culture, an encouraging culture. If you come in with somewhat of an attack mode, you can be destructive. I think you can lift people up. And one of the things I've said is what we've got to do as a community now, because the other thing is, Sonny talked about the board's role, that it is supervisory, it approves policies, it's not executive, and that's totally correct. But the other role of the board is the third role, advocating for public schools in the community, going out and creating a positive image for the schools, getting allies, and getting this whole community to work together. Because schools, the reason I'm running, one of them is, there is no other investment that's more important for our future than K-12 education. And I have an opportunity at this late stage of my life to contribute to community service, and that's why I'm doing it. So that third role of going out to the community, that's not something intermittent. That's got to be something dedicated and continual. And when I'm going to talk a little bit about the culture affects all of us. I happen to speak Spanish, and I found during this campaign, I get an incredible welcome, the fact that you can talk in both languages and unify both communities. These are the things to go, but I don't think we can go back and throw blame around. I think that's not a good thing to do. I think if you see a problem, you come into it and you try to constructively do better with your people. I really like the way Paul Gordon moved his people next to him on the platform.
Absolutely.
And you got away from the way of looking at where somebody was being interrogated by a board member to, I think the board was forced to be more respectful of school employees. I really do.
Well, let me ask you this, Martin. On the school budget, there was some cuts made this past spring, and then they raised the levy, the local levy, 1.5 million, and they're looking at another 500 and something thousand to cut out of next year's school budget. Are there solutions there that you see other than raising the levy again?
Yes, I do. I think the school district took the right decision this time round. I think it was very important to steady the ship, as they said, and get to a point where the bond rating was protected. They took a big decision and made painful cuts. And then once you get there and you get operating, we will be working, I believe, as a district on a new strategic plan. And I'm a continuous improvement person, using all people. You've got to get input from every rung of your organization. And out of that come creative solutions that you can't even imagine until you actually open your ears and listen with respect to everybody. That's what's really important. So I'm hopeful that over the course of this budget, with stabilization, people will come up with ideas. Now, they're all the trends, including the cost structure of education, which tends to have quite a high escalating factor, that will make it difficult. So we may need to work on taxes. But one thing I'd like to say is that local tax, the school district doesn't have that much discretion often on its money. It's funded by Olympia with rules by Olympia. It's funded by Washington, D.C. with rules by Washington, D.C. That local levy is the one that local priorities can use. It's the most flexible kind of money. So I think it's very, very powerful. And it is also a kind of industrial development expense, if you call it that. School district is one of our biggest enterprises. It's also an investing enterprise, like building roads. It's got a very high labor content. So if you put some taxes into the school district, it stays in our hometown.
Sonny, you've had an intimate look at the budget.
I have.
Past budget, upcoming budgets.
Yes.
Are we heading for another levy increase?
I really hope not. I really didn't want to increase the levy this time. We didn't have a choice. There are some things that you absolutely have to do. And I am really hopeful that we'll get this situation under control. I do see our future finances as being perhaps one of the most significant challenges that we're going to face. We are a declining enrollment district, and that means the money coming from the state falls a little bit every year. We also have a charter school opening here, I want to say 2 years, a year, 2 years. That's going to affect our enrollment and also, obviously, our income. And yet we will still be providing the entire range of services for all of our students. It is going to require creativity. It's going to require everyone being on the same page and working together. I do believe that there's that old saying, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance.
Well, let me ask you this. Wenatchee School District spends more per pupil each year than most of our area school districts, $1,000 more in most cases. It also, the district, the board, gave pay increases of 11 to 15% to its teachers and other staff.
Yes, we did.
does Wenatchee School District have a revenue problem or a spending problem?
It depends on who you ask.
I'm asking you.
I know,
Yeah.
you're asking me.
Yeah.
My voice on the board is, and it surprises people, I think, I'm a bit of a fiscal conservative on the board. I have not been on the board long enough to understand the full history of pay raises for our district. We were assured that it was long overdue. I believe we will see an active negotiating session next summer when we re-enter contract negotiations with all of the unions. I don't feel comfortable saying where I think that will go. Do we have a revenue problem or do we have a spending problem? Here's the fact. 85% of our budget is employee salary and benefits, of course. This year, the legislature enacted, it's SEB, it's State Employee Benefit, something with a B. And it greatly increased the cost to districts for employee benefits. We had no option about participating in that. That was incredibly expensive. We didn't get to choose. I'm not trying to duck the question. I am very serious that whether we have a revenue problem or a spending problem depends on who you're asking.
Well, let's ask Martin then.
Actually, I have a lot of sympathy for what Sonny has been trying to answer. And I would say that I've studied around the state and looked at other school districts, and I don't know of a school district that isn't in a very similar position to ours.
There are very few.
You can go back over the history about how the McCleary decision was implemented, and the fact of the matter is that the significant, substantial increase in educators' pay was statewide.
Yes.
And now we have to digest this. But then we have to, in fairness, ask ourselves, we've often as a community talked about, are we adequately compensating our teachers to get the best people to come into that career? So I would say historically that Wenatchee is a school district that's offered a wide range of opportunities. And so I think, getting back to what I said, education is an investment in our future. We should be proud of that. We're lucky we're not a school district that cuts arts and cuts discretionary things and doesn't have advanced programs. And
Yeah.
we're a little bit of a magnet for people for diverse opportunities in our school district. And I think that's actually kind of a good thing. So it's easy for me to say I'm looking forward because this is where we are. We like what we've got in terms of the services we offer. And here are some things that I see. I formed some listening groups when I became a candidate of educators, parents, students, community members, and I just listen to them. And you sort of see the challenges that our youth faces. Are schools hope or are they a problem? They're
Exactly.
a hope. And it would be good to have a little bit of freedom of space for teachers and students to fill this around themselves in a more creative way. So I think what I'm really going here is culture, that's investment. Yes, it is going to be expensive. Where we've got to try to defend it. And I think I would responsibly go to the community, look for savings, look what we can do, and really say, Wenatchee, we should be proud of our schools. We should invest them in.
You have to understand one thing about our financial situation. Wenatchee does not have the assessed evaluation that, for instance, the Eastmont district has. Our major employers on this side of the river don't pay taxes into the school district. The PUD, Confluence, CVCH, Wenatchee Valley College. Those are huge employers and they're incredibly important partners in our community. They are incredibly important to the overall health and well-being of our community, but they don't contribute tax-wise to our district. And we don't have the kinds of retail, for instance, that the Eastmont district has, or the industrial, like out by the airport. We have to ask homeowners and small businesses to support us. And Wenatchee has always supported schools. That's been one of the most amazing things, is that they have always supported the schools. because no community can grow and thrive and be healthy without good public schools.
Okay, well, thank you again, both of you.
Thank you, Cal, for
Thank
inviting
you.
me.
Yeah.